All right. Does my screen look okay to everyone? Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Permafrost Young Researchers Network, our Fieldwork webinar series. My name's Emma Lathrop, and I'm the past president of the PYRN network. Today we have a panel of 5 panelists speaking to us about different challenges with planning and conducting fieldwork in the remote areas that many of us work. This is just one of the events that we put on as a network. We often do webinars, we have newsletters, and we host workshops at conferences. And all of this is really to promote young researchers and their collaboration and who are working with permafrost. So if you're interested, if you're not a member of PERN, it's very easy to join. It's free. You can click this link here, or if you Google it, it comes up. And if you're interested in getting involved at the national level, we are looking for national representatives. Saskia Eppinger is our vice president and also the coordinator for national representatives, and she's on the call. So if you want to ask any questions about that, or if there's any PERN events that you'd like to put on in your region, we're happy to help facilitate that. We wanted to get started with a Menti. So if you haven't used this, this is a little audience interaction program, and you can just use this QR code, or you can go to menti.com and use this number code, and it will have you enter like a little Q&A, and we can use this for our panelists to know their audience. Saskia, do you have the results pulled up, or do you want to share your screen? Okay,
yeah,
thanks.
I'm going to share my screen. So we're just going to wait a couple of seconds till most of you have joined.
The first question is, what is career level?
Seems like we have a lot of postdocs today, or all our panelists are joining. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and move to the next question. Does your work involve fieldwork? Seems like most of you have already done fieldwork or are at least planning to do so in the near future. And our last question for all of you is, where is your main field site located? Like in which area, which country? I think you have North America, Himalaya, as well as Greenland, European Alps, Argentinian Andes. So seems like pretty all over the globe. Pakistan as well, USA.
Lots of alpine.
So quite mixed this time.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Let me reshare my slides. So we have a couple of questions planned for our panelists, but this is hopefully going to be audience driven. So if you have any questions, you can ask them in the Q&A, or in the chat, or you can raise your hand and we can unmute you and you can ask your question verbally if you'd like. But Saskia and I are going to take turns asking some questions. And I wanted to start with maybe this first question, which is a little bit philosophical, but I wanted to talk about how there's increasingly the use of a lot of AI tools that are going to maybe replace parts of fieldwork with remote sensing or machine learning tools. And I'm wondering where um, you think fieldwork fits in this technologically advancing world. And this question first will go to Dominic. Oh, wait, I'm so sorry. We totally forgot to do introductions. Sorry. We can start by doing that. Um, Jacob, do you want to start? You're the first on my screen.
Sure. Thanks a lot. My name is Jakob Steiner. I'm a geoscientist at the University of Graz and at the Himalayan University Consortium. So my fieldwork is mainly in high mountain Asia as well as in the very north of Greenland. I come from the hydrology side, so understanding the water, but the water aspect of cold regions, and that's how it links to permafrost, of course. Yeah, thanks a lot for having me.
John, do you want to go next?
Sure. So John Thornley with WSP USA. I'm in industry and I'm a geotechnical and permafrost engineer working in Alaska for some 20 or so years now, and have done a lot of field work and lead a lot of field programs and have a lot of conversations about this topic on a day-to-day basis. So happy to be here.
Dominic, you're next on my screen.
Hello, thank you for the invitation. I'm Dominic Amschwand. I'm a postdoc at the computer science department in Innsbruck, Austria. And I'm actually an earth scientist, so I studied geology, then moved to mountain permafrost. I did a lot of fieldwork, mostly in the Swiss Alps, and now in the Austrian Alps, with few field trips also to Central Asia and Chile.
It's great. Melissa?
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Melissa Ward-Jones. I'm a research assistant professor at the University of Alaska at Fairbanks. I'm a permafrost geomorphologist, and the first half of my career, all my fieldwork was in high Arctic Canada on Axel Heiberg and Ellesmere's Islands. And then I'm now working all over Alaska, but now it's only pretty much Alaska. And it pivoted when I moved to the US, and then also COVID prevented me from going back to Canada. But yeah, experience kind of everywhere. Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa. And then Sophie.
Hi, my name is Sophie Opfergelt. I'm from UC Louvain in Belgium. I'm by training a geologist and more specifically geochemist. I've been conducting fieldwork since 20 years, but for the only past 10 years in the Arctic. Before it was more in like volcanic environment, more in the south, working on weathering processes and then moving to weathering processes in the Arctic. The field sites are mainly Alaska and northern Sweden, Laponia. And the field work is more like in situ measurement and sampling soil, vegetation, and soil pore water and river waters.
Great. Thank you, everybody. And thank you for taking the time to talk to us today. All right, going back to my first question, which was about the use of technology like AI and machine learning that could have replaced some parts of fieldwork. I just wanted to talk about where fieldwork fits into this this new world that we're living in. Dominic, I don't know if you want to start us off.
Yeah, sure. So as I said, I'm at the computer science department, and as a geoscientist, I get a lot of exposure to these new tools, and it's extremely exciting for me. So well, I think actually, I mean, AI is very data hungry, and so it's actually we need more. We need more data from the field. Also, also remote sensing is there's a lot of progress, but in the complex mountain environment that I work in, you simply cannot see everything from satellites. or airplanes. So you do need some ground truth, to connect the above ground and the below ground features. And at the same time, I mean, we field scientists, we get a lot of tools. So yeah, photogrammetry tools, and I mean, it's only the start. So that makes our fieldwork more efficient, also more safe. Potentially, you can spend less time in remote areas, less time in potentially unsafe zones. So there's a lot of benefits for us, and I don't think that these new developments will supersede or replace, as you term it, fieldwork. On the contrary.
Great. John, do you have anything to add from an engineering perspective? And then it's open to any other panelists if you wanted to chime in.
Yeah, I mean, this is the elephant in the room, right? Is AI replacing everything that we do? And I think the short answer is no, right? I mean, I think there's well, first of all, it's impossible to know exactly what's going to come out next. There's so many improvements and a lot of growth with a lot of different tools. But like as Dominic said, these are tools in the toolbox, but they will not necessarily directly replace field work. I mean, boots on the ground to truth out information is, I think, always going to be critical. It may be less, maybe more. It's hard to say, but I think that there's always going to be space for getting boots on the ground, getting your fingers dirty. So,
Jacob, do you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, these are excellent points already. I want to give you an example, a very recent example from a field site that we are monitoring in western Nepal, in a very remote location where we had a lake outburst event from a thermokarst lake, a very active permafrost region. And that damaged a whole village. There was a lot of discussion in Nepal about this as well. Now we are trying to piece together what actually happened there. Most of this we're doing remotely with the data we have, because the field data that is being, or field instrumentation that's being installed, is not being shared, which is another frustration in our research, right? So we are looking at this remotely. AI there and all kinds of tools, remote tools, are great, but what we cannot replace is trying to understand from the people, what they have experienced in the past. So trying to understand what they have observed in some locations. So I have to talk to them. Also, when and they know a lot because they go to these locations. And this is the same in Switzerland or in Canada, right? That people who live in these locations, they know a lot about past changes that we cannot see from any AI tools so far. And the other aspect, of course, is if we ask ourselves, why are we doing this research, right? Even if we're looking at permafrost changes that have hazard relevance, for example, also what we saw in Switzerland in the last 2 weeks. Then it's very important to work closely with the people, because it very quickly gets political, and who is responsible and who is going to monitor this in future. Are the people going to stay there? Do they have to move away? It gets emotional as well. And if we are doing this all remote, we remain the remote experts that are not, if we are not graspable for the people who live there, then this work becomes very, very awkward. And actually, we benefit a lot from the local knowledge that we have. So I think on some aspects, AI is very, very. So on some aspects, AI is fantastic, and other tools that we can use at our fingertips anywhere on the planet. But on other aspects, we are very far away from replacing that. If we look at the bigger picture of how permafrost is changing and how that is affecting all of us.
Great, thanks, Melissa. Yeah, go.
Yeah, just to kind of wrap it up, like how I see it is really like one complements the other, and I don't think the technology can replace fieldwork, but it complements it. And also, it's like I think it's like you can't truly understand a place fully unless you spend time there, right? It's like a satellite image or whatever can tell you so much, but unless you're like on the ground, seeing things, seeing the wildlife, meeting the people, that's how you can really truly understand. And if you don't have the opportunity to do fieldwork, to collaborate with people who do fieldwork so they can really put context to your work. And I also think there should be said with trying to do things in different seasons. Like there's a lot of fieldwork that only happens in the summertime, but if we're working in places that are frozen for most of the year, like I think it's really great to try to get like winter or spring fieldwork so you can just really see how different these places look like during the year.
That's great. Thank you all. Oh, Dominic?
Or if I connect these two thoughts further that you brought up, actually. So one thing are the stories from the people on the ground, or in general, the history of the sites is really important. I mean, because all data-driven statistical methods, they only tell you something about the present and the recent past in the satellite era. But now in the mountains, we are entering also things happen that have never occurred for hundreds of years. You surely heard about the big rockfall in Switzerland, where an entire village was wiped out that stood there for 600 years. So it's really an event that, it's a return period of 1,000 years or so in that order of magnitude. And to learn really about the history, it's not enough to look at the recent satellite data. We need more time or more depth. And the other thing that we as scientists need to be tangible or relatable to the people in the field, and that's probably one disadvantage of AI tools. They're black boxes for the people out there, and they're black boxes even for the computer scientists themselves, and it's really hard to communicate or decisions based on such tools and to justify some often hard decisions on such tools.
Thank you all. So as a very brief summary, we will not lose fieldwork. Fieldwork will always be necessary for us to gain some information. But for our next question, do you think fieldwork has changed the way you look at onto permafrost or onto permafrost research or onto the processes there? And I'll mix in a question from the audience. Is there a special piece of equipment or clothing that is often overlooked when you do that permafrost fieldwork? I'll start with Sophie, as you're coming from outside permafrost research.
Yeah, definitely. The fieldwork has completely changed the way I read about it. In terms of the scale of the process, it's just having a sense of what is the portion of the landscape that is affected. Also in terms of feeling it. For like the first time you measure an active layer depth by yourself, you actually take a full conscience of what is under your feet. And even if your data collection does not involve even if it's more like model based, I think have a sense of the actual data collection and where the data come from is very important also in terms of what a point represents in the data set. So it's really also when you come back, you realize more how hard it is to get a long-term time series, for example, or it's not like you get a table, you actually get how it was to collect these data. So one point I wanted to make also in terms of how it changed my sense of the field in permafrost research is about collaborative fieldwork. So if you go on the field with different people with different expertise, some people will look at the field in terms of geomorphology, some in terms of geochemistry, hydrology, and you debrief in the evening, and not everyone has seen the same thing, and suddenly you connect information, and that is wonderful because everybody is focused on one thing on the field, and that's wonderful. Then you have more ideas, and that's the most important thing from the fieldwork, collaborative fieldwork, I think.
I like that point about different perspectives, Sophie. I think it's really important. Did you want to, in the chat, we have a question, which was, what is a piece of equipment or clothing that's overlooked?
Yeah, that I would say depends highly on the season you go. Like Melissa said, I think it's important to go at different seasons, but definitely will not be the same if you need your shirt for the mosquito in the summer, or if you need your very warm jacket in the winter. Maybe the most useful piece of equipment to repair anything that's broken is the very strong Gorilla Tape that can help in any situation. Really, if you need to come up with a solution for something you have not brought with you and you have pieces of equipment that can bind together, you have your Gorilla Tape to save. This might seem stupid, but it can help in many situations. It can also repair your jacket if it's broken. It can do a lot of things.
Yeah, Melissa.
Yeah, to that question, I was just gonna add, like, yeah, so everything that Sophie said, like kind of like the extra stuff, the tape, the zip ties, all that. And I always work in really remote areas, so I always try to rack my brain, like, okay, what could I possibly need for, like, you know, in terms of things from pharmacies or whatever. But I earlier in my career, I always kind of forgot about the downtime. So like things to do, like when you're not doing field work, like you always focus on the work, and then it's like, oh, what am I going to do when, like, bring a book or bring a like a game or and just think of like you know, like a piece of clothing or potentially something that you might want to change into something to like kind of keep you happy when you're like not working. I think it's something that's forgotten.
Does anyone else want to answer that question?
I mean, I can, yeah, just very quick. I agree on the Gorilla Tape. Something that in my last field trip in the very north of Greenland, our zipper of the tent broke many times, and I think even Gorilla Tape didn't work at one point anymore. And we had, and it's also far, far away from any kind of civilization. So we actually thought next time we have to bring replacement zippers for the tents, because it was the most annoying thing that we had to constantly try to piece it together again. It took us so much time of the day, and we hadn't thought about it. But I guess, yeah, the things to something to fix in very extreme environments, especially in the Arctic with very high winds, is crucial.
I'm not a panelist, but I might just add one of the most important things might also be chocolate, just to keep up the mood in any bad situation that's coming around. That's always helpful. But I think if none of you wants to add something, oh, Melissa, yes, of course.
Yeah, I just want to add one other thing. Like if you do kind of cold season work, like the winter field work, just being aware of what breaks and doesn't work in the cold. Like for example, like a hot water bottle, like my first seasons were winter seasons, and I remember a supervisor saying like a regular rubber hot water bottle will like shatter. So there's like, don't even bother, like bring your Nalgene bottle and use that instead. So there's all those, like, you really need to be mindful of temperature when you're, yeah.
Great, then we might just move over to the next question. Emma?
Yes, the next question. I wanted to ask, so we talked a little bit about planning, but I also wanted to ask what happens when you plan to collect a certain amount of data and then you don't end up achieving those plans, or things are going wrong in the field and you all of a sudden don't have time to collect everything that you think that you were going to. Your plan A is out the window. Yeah, so what's the strategy when that happens, if that happens? John, do you want to start that question?
Sure. I can say that that not getting all the data that you want happens pretty regularly. Because, you know, you always have grand ideas, equipment breaks, you know, different things happen that impacts your ability to actually collect all the data you want. And so then you have to decide whether it's data that you need or data that you want, right? And if it's data that you need, in engineering, you know, we often are going out to project sites, collecting data, say ground temperatures, and if we run into problems collecting those ground temperatures, you know, ground temperature is critical for, you know, permafrost engineering design. And so we'll have to remobilize, you know, sometimes depending on whose you know, issue it is, at our own cost to collect that data. But you know, it's critical that we get good ground temperature data. So we spend a lot of time actually talking about how to, pull that off before going out into the field so that we're not just sending somebody out blindly and then being surprised they don't collect the data. But I would say, be prepared that not collecting all the data that you want does happen. And so then you just have to really reevaluate, whether it's data that you really need to do your work or not. And then, just suck it up and go back out and get it because it can be critical.
Mm.
Lots of stories on that.
I don't know if Sophie or Melissa go, or yeah, I guess Melissa can go.
Okay. Yeah, I was just to go to the point with like sensors, like just kind of expect like things are going to fail. And like there's strategies around that. So if you're doing ground temperatures at different depths, it's like having more than one logger and then kind of so you'd have like say like one shallow, then one deep, and then the other one's like another shallow temperature. So it's like kind of organizing it in a way that if one fails, you still have some of your data. And then also just like be sad and being like, well, it happens. And then sometimes it can be a really great party story. Like, we had bear that destroyed our weather station. We're like, okay, well, there you go. Or things you didn't think about. Like I do agriculture field work and there was a miscommunication with the field manager and the field got dissed and they destroyed all my field sensors last week. And so you're like, okay, destroyed by agriculture equipment. Like it just happens. And, I think it's just part of doing field work. It's like things don't work, things break.
Yeah, and I should add on just one other point. Don't learn how to use the equipment when you go out to the field. Spend time with the equipment before you actually go out into the field, because if you're trying to learn how to use a program in the field, you're likely going to fail, right? And so, and make sure that you have all of your firmware updated and software patches updated and so on and so forth, because there are too many times when somebody says, "Well, I opened up my laptop and I needed this thing, and I'm out here in the middle of nowhere and no way to get that information, and so I had to come back to the office and redo that." And there are many stories of that, and that's kind of a shame on us thing, not a bummer like accidental loss due to a bear, right? Melissa, these are things in our control, and so control those things and take the time, right? Take time to save time. So.
Jacob and then Sophie, or
Yeah, I think so. Excellent advice already, and I want to add to that I think when you do fieldwork with PhDs, and I think there are a couple of PhDs probably in the audience as well. For us as more advanced scientists in terms of career, I think we have a bit of a responsibility to take off that pressure of PhD students. PhD students only have, and I have had that in my own experience, you only have 3 years, and you have to wrap it all up and. Things, like John said, go wrong all the time. This is quite normal, but it's much harder for a PhD student to just say, "Okay, I'll suck it up," and no data for my first chapter. I don't know. So I think we do have a. It's helpful to look out for those who are under pressure to kind of get something done with that data, right, and had grand plans in their research project, and then it doesn't work, and help them to learn how to suck it up for their career afterwards, but then also how to deal with that situation right there, right now, and that there are solutions around it, and just because it didn't work once doesn't mean that your PhD is doomed or your first chapter is completely there are always alternatives around. But I think that is much harder to see when you're at the very beginning of your career. So for us, it's important also in the field when all that pressure is there. So I had that a lot when I was in the field, that to tell them, it's fine, it's going to work out somehow.
Yes, something that I wanted to add is the way we usually prepare field work is with the people coming, we have a plan A for what is like the minimum requirement that we would like to come back with. Then plan B is if we have secured that and we have enough time, then this is what would be great. And then plan C is, wow, we have the luxury to have plenty of time. The weather is perfect. Nobody's sick. And we have still energy. Then we have that extra bit that would add something, but that is not mandatory. And it keeps everyone happy that we go with that plan. We also have that on the fridge and we have that underline that it's made, and it makes us happy on the field that it's made. And then if we go to the next step, we know it's extra and it's good, but we also know in terms of pressure that we keep our energy for like the most important things, and we don't lose too much energy at things that are either exploratory or mandatory if we don't have, or that means that we keep time. Like Melissa said, I think it's important to have downtime as well. We plan that in the planning, but we also know that these downtime, if there has been some unexpected events, then there is some buffer in case of need, or buffer for the weather. But at least it makes a peaceful atmosphere to know that whatever we collect in addition to the to the plan A is bonus, basically. And also sometimes it happens that you go on the field with the mission is to be exploratory. So sometimes it happens that they have some data are really, we don't know if we're going to be able to get these data, and it's good also to be aware of that. Sometimes you test something, it's completely exploratory, and you will see maybe the year after you will come up with a better solution to get that. But if you know it in advance, it's okay. You feel safe with that.
Great, thank you all. We just heard that sometimes things go wrong on fieldwork, and we wanted to ask you, and that's a question for all of you, but you only have to answer if you feel like you want to answer it. Did you ever feel unsafe in the field or looking back on your fieldwork? And was there something you could have avoided or you did different the next time you went there? Or do you have any tips how to handle these kind of situations?
Okay, I'll start, I guess. I mean, so I would say sometime if anybody's ever interested, we can go and sit down and have a cup of coffee or something like that, and I can talk about my progress in the world of health and safety, right? Because I started off in field work doing things very unsafely, right? And that was the way it was, and that is not the way it is now, right? And so I can kind of talk through that whole bit of how I've changed over time. But I think, at the end of the day, it really comes down to you are in charge of you, right? You are in charge of your own safety. You have every right to stop work. And one of the things that we talk about in the mining industry, they say take five. When things aren't going right, when something changes, it's okay to take 5 minutes and just kind of regroup and say, all right, let's stop. Let's kind of take, assess the situation and kind of rethink things, right? If you lose 5 minutes of your field work, just kind of reassessing what's happening, that's not a bad thing. And the key, I think, is and what I like to tell juniors that are going out and doing a lot of field work for our company is, I truly want you to come back with all of your fingers and all of your toes, right? And nothing that we do in the field should take that into, challenge that. There's always a way to do things safely, and if you can't do it safely, you shouldn't do it at all. and so that's kind of a big thing for me. I feel very strongly about is, it needs to be a safe environment. And if it's not, then stop, and it's not worth doing. So I think that's, you need to feel empowered as a new, career or new field worker, if you will, to be able to just push the pause button for a minute and feel okay with that, no matter who's out there in the field with you. So, yeah. Anyway, I'll stop there. I can go on a lot.
Thanks, Melissa.
Yeah. So building off of what John was saying, is particularly it's like, don't be afraid to speak up. Like I remember one particularly instance. I was in Norway on Svalbard. We were walking up Longyear, and it was me and a bunch of students, but like we didn't have a field plan, and like the weather was starting to turn, and we were going off. And I spoke up, and I was like, "This isn't safe." Like, and I was getting like pushed back by others, and I was just like, "No," and I really stood my ground. And after at the end of the day, I actually had other people in the group come to me and being like, I'm so happy you said something because I also felt unsafe, but I was too scared to say something because of the personalities. So it's like you know, that might cause a bit of conflict, but like if you feel unsafe, you should say something. Absolutely. And then also just unfortunately, I've had the experience of calling search and rescue after a plane crash that my husband was in, who's also done field work that killed the pilot. And it's just like it's really important to know like your field plan, the people at your institution, your family members, someone keep it like who's like keeping tabs on you, but also knows who to call. So like I knew who to call. I knew like which search and rescue number to call. That saves a lot of time. That can be life and death. Is just making sure that people like kind of around you like know what to do and who to call and how to contact because that can unfortunate hopefully it never happens, but if a time happens where you need to know that information, you can do it and hopefully everything turns out okay. And also another a big lesson that we learned from that plane crash was that like an inReach device, what saved him, like he had it on the dash of the airplane because that was the only place to get a signal while he was flying. But then during the crash, it got lost and somehow his phone stayed connected via Bluetooth, but we never ever found the inReach again. And so that is literally what saved his life because the beacon on the airplane didn't work. So I was the only person who knew that the plane crash had happened. And so it's like always keep your communication device on your person. Okay, take it out to send a message, but hold it and put it back. Like don't just let it out because it can be a life and death situation.
Yes, maybe I'm happy to add something on that. Something to be prepared for that is also to know very well the team members. So it's about being safe on the field, but being safe in a safe space with the people you do field work with. So if not everyone has the same threshold of being tired or being cold, and I think it's extremely important to talk about that before going on the field, that it's fine to say that you're cold and it's fine if you are hungry, if you need to stop, and nobody will judge or because otherwise you put also other people at risk if you don't speak up. Because when you are cold and you haven't said anything, at some point it's too late and everyone has to rush to go back. And I think that's one also in terms of energy to be also able to keep as much energy at the end of the day to go back safely because sometimes you want to push, the sun is there, it goes well and you still have energy, but you still need time to pack up everything, go back, and then still prepare food and have energy for the day after. So that's something we did in the beginning of field work, trying to push long days and then not be aware that you still need the energy to finish your day. So it's all kind of things that you can avoid and be prepared.
Thank you, Jakob. Go ahead.
Yeah, really just to build on what has been said, a very technical thing, since Melissa mentioned inReach, and for anyone in the audience who doesn't know it, right? So this is it's a very simple device in a way, and we work with both. And those of you who have been around longer, they are very much used to the satellite phone, which is great. But actually, how inReach has developed, it makes communication so much more efficient now in combination with a mobile phone. Also, the way that you can type and communicate. So that's a very technical aspect that actually saved us a lot in extreme situations in the Arctic, because it's much easier to communicate. Satellite phone, it was much harder for us. It takes much longer to type messages, which time is important at times. So for those of you who don't know inReach, look into it and are working in remote places also with no telephone connection. It's a fantastic development, I think, and it's very small and super handy to use. The other aspect, so I work in mountain permafrost, and historically that's been very much influenced by people who come from mountaineering. And I think this builds on what has been commented here already. It's very important to communicate to people that this is not mountaineering, right? This is work, and it has to be absolutely safe before you have to be sure that it's safe what you do. When you go for mountaineering, you take different decisions. You take risky decisions that may endanger your life and those of your partners, but you take that risk because that's your hobby, and you decide to do that. But when you do field work, it's something different. And unfortunately, at times, especially those who have a lot of experience, they sometimes find it very hard to separate between the two, right? Because they feel like, well, I've been in the mountains all my life, I know what I'm doing. And it's hard for these people to, and this includes myself, to separate between where do I make a mountaineering decision and where do I make a decision for work and the safety of others in my team who may not, like Melissa said, may not agree or may have a different, a different view and may have seen something and should have spoken out. So I think the planning around this, it's very, very important to communicate that this is not an adventure sport. Everyone has to be safe in your team. And if you want to do adventure sport, then do it in your own time. This is work, and it has to be safe. And if it means that if you don't do something and it means you don't get your data, okay, then you won't get your data. That's part of work. And that's in the mountain aspect of permafrost work and cryosphere in general. I think is very, very crucial to communicate and that everyone is on board in a team, especially if you have a couple of people with different experience levels as well. That the team building and these kind of exercises on how you communicate also non-verbally within a team are often more crucial than than more technical aspects of safety, I even think. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you all. Dominic, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I'd like to share an experience that I made so during the PhD. So we were an extremely enthusiastic team. So I was enthusiastic and ambitious, and also the supervisors, basically everyone, and that's almost always a very good thing. But being in a field, maybe it was not, maybe we're not always critical enough, or I was not always critical enough whether I should do a few things. For example, I was working on a rock glacier. It's a very coarse, blocky landform. And for example, I sometimes climbed down to 2 meters to install loggers, sometimes even head first down between these big blocks. And I mean, I got great data, but in hindsight, um, now doing my postdoc, maybe it was not necessary do it so many times. And for that, you need experience. Also, what has been mentioned about the value of the data that you gather. I mean, as a PhD, just go for it, and you think it's great, but you cannot really assess what's the worth of that data. And in that moment, in hindsight, I wish that my supervisor would have stopped me, or that we communicated more clearly. It's in this atmosphere, just everyone, yeah, went ahead. And another thing, the field site I was working on is actually a very well-known site in Swiss permafrost research. So there's a lot of research there since the 1970s, and it has always been considered a kind of a safe place for a mountain permafrost setting. Nothing unusual, but actually during my PhD, there were more and more rock falls. It started early PhD, a big one that made it to the media with the big dust cloud, and actually at the end of my PhD, even our installations were destroyed, and that's basically you need to reassess even a site that you think you are familiar with that might change, and in our case it changed fast. It changed really over 4 years, which is basically nothing over my PhD. I really feel different to the field site now compared to the very beginning of my PhD.
Thanks, everyone. Those are nice answers. I want to ask, looks like there's 2 questions, one in the chat and then one in the Q&A, and we have about 13 minutes left, so I'll go to this first question, which seems related to what we were just talking about, but this is from Trevor Crosby. The question is, how do you manage the common while you're out there? Can you also requests during field work, especially when crews are already working long hours or extending their time in the field? And how can supervisors and managers support field staff by keeping them safe, focused, and not overextended while remaining responsive to both the planned projects and emerging needs? Sophie?
Yes, so I think it's part of the planning of before, like for example, never you can never give a promises to the people who ask before. You can say we will see how it goes with the planning and the weather and everything. And it's always good to have a pre-planning and sort of estimate what you think you might be able to do per day, per effective field day by removing the flight and the setup and everything. And then it's always important to reassess with the team what the energy level is, because if it's burned after 3 days because everyone has pushed, it doesn't matter if we have 10 more days, because if everybody is exhausted. So it's very important these extra bits can be planned when the rest is secured, when everybody has still energy, and it's always an assessment together to be done, reassessed during the field work. I suggest. And also a big question is, what does it require in terms of equipment to bring with? Because in terms of weight and installation and learning, also it was said before, to learn the instrumentation before going on the field. If this extra bit requires to learn a new technique, it's extremely important to secure that before, because then you want to help, but you lose a lot of time to learn that on the field. So yeah, that's also to take into account.
Thanks, Sophie.
I
John.
I could throw in a little bit. To me, it sounds like a fatigue policy, right? Basically, you should be working with your supervisor, your company, whoever you're with, to develop a fatigue policy and understand, what limitations there are. So if you have a 3-week program and it extends to 4 weeks and 5 weeks, right? Your fatigue policy should be able to protect you from making bad decisions. For example, we have a fatigue policy where we often work 7 days a week, 12 hours a day in the field. And our fatigue policy is that you do that for 3 weeks, and we try to stick with that the best we can. Because oftentimes things happen and programs extend, and what turns in from 3 weeks turns to 4 weeks and 5 weeks, and you look back and you say, well, why didn't we bring this person back from the field because and replace them? Well, we thought it was just going to be an extra day or an extra 2 days, right? But stick to the plan, right? And then reassess. Some people do well after 3 weeks, and they can stick it out a few more days. But you have to have really honest assessments. And I think we've talked about this, a couple different ways, honest assessments about how you're feeling, how you're holding up, day to day, or, on a long show. But come in with a plan, right? Your plan, your fatigue policy, it should be something that you should respect just as much as trying to collect the right data.
Thank you very much. We got one more question from the audience. It seems like we have a high school student in our audience who wants to know how it's possible for them to pursue fieldwork, or how to get into research and opportunities in permafrost at that very early stage. Do you have any tips for them?
So just reach out and ask. Find people you're interested in working with. I actually had a high school student reach out to me a couple of years ago, and unfortunately we couldn't under the circumstances, I couldn't take her to do field work, but we built this really great mentorship relationship where we spoke once a month, and now she's in college, and it was great. And I helped her find other opportunities for field work. So just reach out, and the worst that'll happen is they'll say no, right? But you can't get an opportunity unless you ask.
Dominic?
Yeah, I went several times into the field with high school students, but you have to realize in the Swiss Alps, this is a day trip. So you can do, well, it's logistically much easier to take people into the field of course, if the planning permits that. I mean, you need extra time if you want to do it well, if you want to explain something, or also for the safety of more responsibilities. That should, of course, be taken into account.
Great, thank you. So we have a couple of more minutes, and as all of us, we all get older while we are in our career. So we might get a family or something. So we wanted to ask you, how do you handle your social life at home, your family, maybe kids, when you have to go on fieldwork or when you do go on fieldwork? Sometimes not just for a day in alpine environment, but for a couple of weeks or even longer.
And we wanted to start with Melissa, who's the author of a couple articles about this issue. So if you have anything you want to start with.
Yeah, so so my research has always been very heavily focused on fieldwork. So I've been doing fieldwork for like over 10 years. And then when it came to the time to decide to start a family, and my husband is also like a researcher, right? And so I think it's like if you're thinking about that, I think it's really, really important to have a very honest conversation with your partner of like what it means to do fieldwork and potentially balance family. And our solution for us personally was just, well, we're going to take our kid with us. And so that's what we do. Of course, that doesn't work for everyone and that doesn't work in all places, but my daughter has been doing fieldwork with me and us since she was 2 months old, 3 months old. She came to the Arctic. And she comes a couple times a year. We were in Bethel last week and she came with us. And it's like really difficult and also really awesome all together, all at the same time. And also it's like when you're like working with communities, like it's just like she plays with kids and she like meets, and I think it really gives you, I've been able to form these relationships with people in communities on a level that I don't think I would have been able to like without her presence. So I think there's that nice aspects, but it's just, you just need to adapt. And I know other couples, right? It's like they, partner takes care of their child at home while they're doing fieldwork. Like my husband does like I solo parent a good 2 to 3 months a year while he's doing fieldwork. I've decreased my field activities, and that just is what works for us. And I think it looks different for everyone, but you just need to be flexible. And I think one thing that's really important is to give space to people with families to be able to communicate with their families when they're in the field. So giving them like space and time to call home. It might be on like for me, it's a daily basis. Like the few times we've done fieldwork without her, we call her every single day. And like I think it's important to give people that space to do that. And I'm happy to talk about this outside of this for anybody who wants to reach out and stuff. Yeah.
Sophie?
Yes, so this is something who has evolved because kids have grown up now, but when they were very small, it was a lot of planning before, and but once on the field, when everything is planned, then you have your head completely okay because you are safe, they are safe, and so you can do what you need to do. So it was more in terms of planning for the care and for the dinner and preparing stuff that was not too much on my husband's shoulder when I was away. But now that the kids are grown up, I must say that this is also an opportunity for them to be with their father during the time, and they have a good time. And sometimes we have the other way around, and it's actually great to have these moments of exchange after, to realize that they've had this specific moment with their dad. And so I must say, when it's planned and when it's discussed, like Melissa said, to discuss that ahead, then you feel okay to do it. Otherwise, there is always this question of guilt when if you go and if it's not discussed. But it's true that accumulating fieldwork and conferences time away from home over the year, it has to be like a reasonable time in total over the year, balancing between fieldwork and conferences.
Anyone else have a response for that question? Okay, looks like we're approaching the top of the hour. I guess I think it would be nice if we just wanted to hear once more from each panelist. I was going to ask if you have one piece of advice for early career researchers in the field, if what that would be, or maybe if you could go back in time, what you wish you would have done in field work? It could be something specific or more vague.
I can start, I guess. I'll just say, get as much field work and as much variety as you can. It makes you a better scientist or engineer. I can tell the difference between engineers who haven't spent much time in the field versus those that have. I would say that in geotechnical engineering, permafrost engineering, it just makes you a better engineer, and you're providing recommendations and designs that actually make sense. So get out there, get experience, get your hands and feet dirty, and yeah, it pays in the long haul.
I would say I feel like field work, it's like you just got to be good at pivoting. You just have to like things don't work, so you pivot. And it's like also it's like your research, like you're on time and it's like if this doesn't work, but you're gonna find something. You just have to be good at like going plan. Sometimes it's like plan like A, B, C, D, E, or like D, and it keeps going. But it's like, it's always good to have a plan and be adaptable and just to be good at pivoting. And also take photos of everything, write things down. You think you're going to remember something, you will not remember it the next year. Like take the GPS point, write it down, take extra pictures. There's always times where like writing a paper and it's like, oh, I wish I took a photo of the thing that I didn't think I needed at the time. And so it's just, yeah, just kind of always do. There's no such thing as over documenting. So
Yeah, and learn how to take good pictures. Oftentimes I see a lot of photos that I'm like, well, that's useless. If you would have just stepped back and taken a different angle, it might have been a little more useful. So, yeah, I like that, Melissa. That's documentation, yeah, and good documentation.
Dominic, you had your hand up.
That's just been said, but yeah, taking a step back, I realized that often my pictures were all very often too detailed, too close, and it was actually not very useful in the end.
Jacob?
If you get pivoting was mentioned, and being resilient and adaptive in the field, I think that you can learn a lot if you do fieldwork with different people and with their very different approaches. Also, if you're in field sites where other people are working from other groups and especially other disciplines, exchange with them. I enjoy working a lot with an anthropologist in my field site, and we have very, very different ways of doing our field work. But I learn, the way they are dealing with risk, the way they are planning, the way it's very different. And I luckily had the chance and to work in different field teams in different locations. This helped me to learn myself how to make decisions. If you're always in the same environment, sometimes it's a bit too everyone is too used to their own roles already. So if you get the chance to work with other people, take the plunge, do that, take the experience. And I think that links to something what was mentioned before for high school students. Get in touch with other people, ask them, especially if you're an early career scientist and want to know what other people, what advice they would give. Just and there's some scientists you think could help you. Just write to them and ask them. We are generally very happy that we are asked because it makes us feel. Well, it makes us feel important, I guess. But so this reaching out is really it's a low it's a low bar. It's an email written, it's a message sent, and that getting experience from very different people, I think, helps in building your own way of how you deal with challenges in the field that will always come up eventually anyway.
Thanks, Sophie.
Yeah, maybe one point is that there is never a stupid question before going on the field, because if you feel safe, if you have asked everything you think was a burden on your mind before you go, then you can do what you have to do on the field without these questions that are bothering you. And I think it's the preparation step, I think, make you more efficient, and also you have a better experience of the field work when you come back, because you have like anticipated a lot of things. It means also including the distance from where you stay in the evening and your field, how much you can do over one day, assessing that. And this is where all these tools that we have now are very useful to plan that ahead, because it saves you a lot of time on the field and you are much more mentally ready to do what you want to do on the field. So never a stupid question before going.
Thanks. Dominic, did you want to say something?
Well, no, a lot has been said, a lot of good things. Yeah, I think planning and prioritization is very, very important. That if things don't work out as planned, which they rarely do, have at least a list actually written down, not only in your head, but I had in my field written down, and I assessed regularly the performance and how far I got with this list. And it always, if something yeah, for example, didn't turn out well, then you can just stop. For example, you realize you did the most important things, and it's okay to stop and maybe go with fresh forces the next day. And
Great. Thank you all.
So if there are no more questions from the audience, and it seems like there are not, we're coming towards the end of our panel discussion. So if you have last minute questions, raise your hand, we can unmute you, or you just write in the chat. Otherwise, we really, really want to thank all of our panelists for their time, for sharing their stories, and for being here with us today. Thank you all very, very much. Thank you to the audience. Thank you to all the other PERM members that helped us organize this event, part of the XCOM. And we hope you had a very interesting seminar today, and we're looking forward to see you again in one of our future seminars. So if there are no more questions, thank you all. Thank you, panelists. And
Yeah, thanks
have
for
a
having
great
us.
day. And
Thanks for
of
having
course,
us.
have a great fieldwork season.
yeah, thank